Hello YouTube, this is Derek with my top 5 games of 2013. I did not do a top 10 list on this because, to be honest, I don't think I've really played enough games that came out in 2013 to justify a full 10. But I did play a lot of the games that came out in 2013, and definitely enough to justify a top 5 list. So I'll start off with the same disclaimer that everybody gives on these types of lists. This is my list, my opinion. And the way that I'm structuring this is I'm doing this based on the games that just I personally had the most fun playing. So there may be some games that have reviewed more highly in the general public, but just for me personally, these are the ones that I had the most genuine fun playing. There were a few games that I didn't get a chance to play that might have made the list if I had gotten to them. So unfortunately, I'm just not going to be able to include those. Beyond Two Souls was a big one. I really wanted to try that one because I loved Heavy Rain so much, but just didn't get a chance to do it. And then also Tales of Xillia is another one, Guacamelee, Tearaway. There's lots of games that I really wanted to play and just didn't get to. But I figured, well, I'll just go ahead and do my top 10 list, or my top 5 list now. And if something comes up when I play those games and need to amend it later, I always can. So I will start off, though, with an honorable mention. I do have one game that didn't quite make the top 5, even though I absolutely loved this game. Now, this is a game that I really don't have a lot of bad to say about it, but just it didn't wow me as much as some of the other ones on this list, and that is The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. And I know a lot of people are putting this as the game of the year, and it is an exceptional game. It is an amazing piece of work, and it's a lot of fun. And like I said, there really isn't a lot of negative things I can say about it. I think it's just that some of the other games on this list were ones that kind of blew me away and wowed me. And with The Legend of Zelda, even though it is a solid Zelda game and one of the best Zelda games I've played in a very long time, it still felt like Zelda, which was good, which is what we wanted. But because of that, it didn't have the same kind of wow factor that some of these other games on the list have. So that's why it didn't quite make the top 5, although I really did struggle with that decision because it's such a fantastic game. So that is my honorable mention. Starting off the list at number 5 is The Last of Us. And this was an amazing accomplishment of storytelling and character development and gameplay. Everything about this game was fantastic. Now, the reason it's not higher, and again, this is another one I know a lot of people are placing at the top of their list, is again going back to how much fun I personally had. Now, I don't like stealth games. I just don't. It's not my style. It's a game I find it boring. And so the gameplay of The Last of Us I didn't personally enjoy. I can understand that if that's your kind of game, it's really good. But it's just not mine. So for me, in fact, there were a couple of times I had to force myself to continue just because I was kind of frustrated with the gameplay. But the reason that I did that was this story. And what was so exciting about the story of The Last of Us was that what made it great wasn't the plot necessarily. It wasn't a string of events, although there were some great events and set pieces. What the whole point of that game was, it was a character study. It was a character study about this man and what he's gone through, what the world's done to him, how he deals with that, how the events of the game change the way he looks at the world, and the decisions that he makes, how they change based on the events of the game. That is bold and brilliant and amazing to put in a video game that's based on a character arc. That's the whole point of that game. Yeah, there's action and there's set pieces and there is plot, but that's the entirety of the story. That's what it can be boiled down to, is Joel and his growth as a human being, whether for good or bad. And the other thing that I love about it is that it's so open to interpretation. The game itself and the choices that he makes and the way that his character is growing can be good or bad depending on how you see it. And I've heard people discuss the game, and especially certain lines or things that happen in it, and they'll have vastly different opinions about what those lines meant or what the story was about, but both of them were equally valid opinions. They both were able to be backed up. They made sense if you looked at it a certain way, but they were completely different. And I love that. That to me is a hallmark of a great piece of art, when you can have multiple interpretations of the same thing and all of them make sense in the context. It's brilliant. And the storyline, the storytelling in that game, and the way that the violence of, and the visceral nature of the animations of the violence and everything just all came together. It is a brilliant game. So the fact that it's not higher on my list, don't misinterpret that to me I didn't like the game. The game is phenomenal. But when it comes down to how much fun did I have playing it, the other games in this series were more fun. But I recognize the accomplishment that it is, and I'm excited to see what Naughty Dog is going to do in the future. I mean, everything they've come out with so far that I've played has been phenomenal. So I'm excited about what to see they're going to do in the next generation here. So my next game is one I actually have the box for. A lot of these I don't have the box for. I've sort of embraced the digital age and am downloading things. Some of them I've rented. So I don't have boxes for all, but I do have one for this one. And this game, number 4, is Shin Megami Tensei 4 for the 3DS. This is the first Shin Megami Tensei game that I have played, and I want to go out and buy every single thing that has this name on it, because this game was outstanding. It was so much fun. I mean, it was just, it blew me away in the amount of addictive quality that it had. Catching the demons, fusing the demons, exploring the dungeons. It had some faults, and I'm going to do a My Thoughts video on this one soon, and I'm going to talk about that, because there are a few faults that actually kept it from being higher on this list. It would definitely have been higher if it weren't for a few really big issues that I had with it. But those big issues aside, were certainly not enough to keep it from being one of the most fun experiences I've had playing a role-playing game in a long time. And I love the atmosphere, the way that the monsters were designed, the way that the characters interacted, everything. I mean, just the storyline, the setting, everything was so much fun, and the gameplay was so addictive. The challenge was great. I know a lot of people talk about the difficulty, and I'll mention that in my Thoughts video. It was hard at times, but I think it's doable. I think it's definitely doable, and it's not one that you should shy away from if you're afraid of the difficulty or if that's not really your thing. So, outstanding. And again, I want to go out and buy every Shin Megami Tensei game I can get my hands on. I started up Persona 4 last night on my Vita. That's so far a fantastic game. I want to pick up Digital Devil Saga and Nocturne and Soul Hackers. I want to get them all because this one was so much fun that I want to be in that world. So Shin Megami Tensei 4, if you have a 3DS, absolutely pick this one up. Number 3 on my list is another one, unfortunately, I don't have the box for. And this is another game that this was the first time that I had played a game in this series, which is kind of surprising considering the fact that I am, been a gamer for a long time, but I just never have gotten around to playing a Tomb Raider game until the one that came out this year, the reboot of the series, and oh my gosh, what a fun game that was. That's one that I just have probably the most instances of just this giddy smile on my face while I'm playing it, and whether it was jumping from ledge to ledge or sliding down ropes or taking out bad guys, even the forced stealth sections in that game, which I don't really like, were somewhat palatable. They were a little bit better than others because it was, first of all, it was only one section of the game, and you're a chick running around with the bow and arrow, so I kind of felt like I was Katniss, kind of role play a little bit there. So that was fun. But man, I had such a blast. It was, and it's one of the few games. Most of the time, I'm the kind of gamer, when I finish a game, I'm done. I've got a lot of games in my backlog that I'm trying to get through, so usually I don't go back and try to complete it. This one I actually might. I'm really thinking about going back and not necessarily trying to get the Platinum trophy on it, but at least getting like 100% of the items and all that stuff and start digging through the tombs. I mean, because it's just such a fun world to be in. The graphics are amazing. The storyline was great. Characters were interesting. I just loved it. I had so much fun. It was some of the most fun I've had this year, and what was interesting was that I played it right after I played The Last of Us, and it was a nice contrast for me to see how, even though The Last of Us's story and the strides that it took in storytelling and gaming are probably a lot stronger than what Tomb Raider had, I just had so much more fun playing Tomb Raider. So that's what that one kind of came down to. Number 2 on my list is a game that also completely blew me away. I wasn't sure how much I was going to like this game until I popped it in, and that was BioShock Infinite. BioShock Infinite was one of the most amazing gaming experiences I've had, and one of the things about that game that is so telling about how impactful it was to me is I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I keep thinking about the story and the setting and the characters and the interactions, everything. I mean, it's in my head all the time, months after I finished it, because it was just so good. And I really didn't think they were going to pull out. Like, BioShock not in rapture? How does that work? I didn't get that. But what was so neat about it is, as soon as you start that game, it feels like BioShock. It feels like the same atmosphere and feeling of isolationism and just everything that you had in the first BioShock game was there, even though the setting was entirely different. And I love that because it shows me BioShock is more than the setting. It's an atmosphere. It's how you feel. And I love, too, how, the first BioShock, you felt so alone and isolated, and there, the only thing people around you were crazy people. But what was really interesting about Infinite is I actually probably in some ways felt more alone in Infinite, even though you're surrounded by people. And people that are not crazy, people that are just going about their daily lives, but you feel so much like an outsider in that world. It's jarring, and it's so impactful and so cool. And the combat, I mean, some people I've heard say they didn't like the game, but I love the gameplay. I had a blast. It was a little on the easy side. If I ever went back to that one, which is, again, I'm thinking about going back to that, which is a testament to how good it is, I would probably definitely put it on a harder difficulty setting, just because it is a little easy and there's not much penalty for dying. At the same time, that doesn't really bother me because the gameplay was fun. And with a game like that, with the story being so strong and so exciting, I would rather be able to go along, have fun with the gameplay, because it wasn't boring. It wasn't like it was so easy that it was boring, but it was just, it was not a super big challenge. I would rather go along and have that kind of experience with the gameplay and be able to get all the pieces of the story instead of getting to a point where I'm stuck because I can't get past a certain boss, a certain level, and not be able to experience the rest of it. Because the story in that one's so amazing that everybody needs to go out there and experience that for themselves, because it is just so cool. I loved that game. And I'm absolutely, I need to just pick up the DLC for it, because I really want to go back to that game and play some more of it. And the core game was just so amazing. Hopefully the DLC is going to be great too. So, all right, so those are my top 4, apart from the first. So again, just going to recap that honorable mention, Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds. Number 5 was The Last of Us. Number 4 was Shin Megami Tensei 4. Number 3 was Tomb Raider. And number 2 was BioShock Infinite. So my game of the year for 2013 was a game that one of the first games I played this year. And it was not only one of the first games I played, but it's also, again, just like BioShock Infinite, one that I think about all the time. And that is Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch. This game was a joy. That's the best way I can describe it. It was a joy. It was a delight. Every moment of that game, the beautiful, amazing art direction, just the gorgeous visuals, the interestingly designed monsters, the fact that all of the different monsters you fought, you could get on your party. It kind of had that Pokemon quality, but it's so much better than Pokemon. And so, Shin Megami Tensei 4 did the same thing. I like the collecting thing. I'm just not a huge Pokemon fan. But just the way that you could get those guys and then level them up and get them gear, and all of that was so addictive. But then the storyline was endearing and sweet and bittersweet and sad. I mean, and heartfelt. I mean, it was a very adult storyline. And that's the thing about this game. I know there are some people that have written this off because, it looks like a cartoon. It is not a kid's game. I mean, the best way to do it's like a Pixar movie. It's a family-friendly thing where everybody can go and enjoy it. And yes, a kid could probably pop this in and have a great time with it, although sometimes the combat gets pretty tough. So you have to have a kid that's patient enough to understand the mechanics of the combat. But they would certainly enjoy the story. But an adult would enjoy the story as well. And in fact, there's parts of it I think that an adult would appreciate more, because an adult, especially that's gone through the loss of a relative or something like that, or that has children. I mean, there's just so much depth to that story on an emotional level. I mean, it's a gut-wrenching, beautiful story. And I've talked to so many people that have played this who have cried at the end of it. I mean, it's just one that it does that to you. It really brings up all of these things. But it's coupled, all of this amazing story is coupled with an amazing game, a fun game to play, and a game that invokes and reminds us of the great RPGs of the past without feeling like just a throwback. I mean, there's so many games that are made with RPG Maker, which is fine, that are blatant homages to the past, which is fine, and I'm glad that those are there because I enjoy playing a lot of those. But what was great about this one was it captured the spirit of it, and it captured the feeling of it while still feeling like a current generation amazing gaming experience with beautiful visuals and amazing story and amazing soundtracks. One of the best soundtracks I've heard in years in a game. I mean, there's just so much to this game, and everything came together to make this beautiful package. And it's one, again, that I think about a lot and go back to in my mind and relive. And it's one of those games that gets in you and doesn't leave, the same way like that Final Fantasy VI got into me, or 4, or you know, and BioShock's the same way. BioShock Infinite's going to be a part of me from now on too, and I love that. I love knowing that these games and these experiences and these artistic expressions have gotten into me in the same way that, you know, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony has gotten into me, or you know, Sweeney Todd the Demon Barber of Fleet Street has gotten into me. All of these artistic expressions become a part of you, and with all of the games that are on my list, I feel like these things have done that and have achieved that in a way more so than a lot of games I've ever played, and more so this year. I think have these games hit me in that way than I have experienced in a very long time, or maybe ever. I mean, the fact that we had such a good crop of games this year that were so impactful, that married story and gameplay so beautifully, and to create a package that was bigger than the sum of its parts and that had this impact on you internally it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing to experience, and it's you know, people say it all the time, but it's true. It's a great time to be a gamer. And if you are on the fence about any of these games, go out and pick them up. If you have questions for me about them on details, pick them up. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a Shin Megami Tensei 4 My Thoughts video here pretty soon, and I may do some on the other ones too, because I don't think I may do one on Zelda. So if you want some more of my thoughts on that, stay tuned for that. And thank you so much, as always, for watching.